Welcome to Taiwan Talks. I'm Ing-wen.
And I'm Albert Chiu.
Taiwanese yesterday voted in Ching-te of the Democratic Progressive Party as the country's next president. They also handed the DPP a third term, which is unprecedented in Taiwan's democratic history. But the ruling party lost control of the parliament.
The DPP Ching-te, Hsiao tickets won 40% of the votes on 5.5 million ballots cast. Their main rivals, KMT Hou You-yi and Zhao Shaokang, trailed with 33% or 4.6 million of the votes.
Meanwhile, the TPP's Ko Wen-je and Cynthia Wu received 26% or 3.6 million votes. Voter turnout was 71% compared to the 75% of 2020 when Tsai won her second term in a landslide.
Joining us today are Dennis Ong, Sam Houston State University in Texas, Associate Professor in Political Science, and Stephen Tan, International Policy Advisory Group Managing Director. A very warm welcome to both on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Dennis, if I can ask you first. So China framed this election as we know, as a choice between war or peace, prosperity or decline. What message did the Taiwanese send China yesterday?
I think the DPP victory actually sent a strong message to China again. Actually, Taiwanese people don't care about what what China want to say, want to say, and Taiwanese people really care about democracy and care about what they want, what they see the issues in Taiwan, instead of pay too much attention to the so-called threat. Basically, when Beijing sending threatening message to Taiwan, they should always learn that Taiwanese people has a very different opinions and different voting behavior than what they believe will happen. Which means if they sending stronger threatening message to Taiwan, maybe Beijing will say, oh, Taiwanese people will vote for someone they like or someone they expect. You know, for instance, the friendly, China-friendly candidate, but Taiwanese people care more about democracy. But another things we need to pay attention is that Taiwanese people do this time, they vote for different candidates. There are three candidates, right? In three candidates means there are options. Not only voting for DPP can show the democracy, voting for the alternative candidate, Ko Wen-je, is also a way for Taiwanese voters, especially younger generation, to show they care about democracy. They like to say something different from the traditional two-party. So for pen blue, pen green, for DPP and KMT, maybe in the future, well, the China factor is not something they can play in an election, but what they actually can deliver to the Taiwanese society will be more important than the traditional China game.
Stephen, so it was a win for democracy, as Dennis said, also that China doesn't choose Taiwan's president.
Yeah, first of all, I want to congratulate to Taiwan and our proud Taiwanese people once again. It's a victory of democracy. It's a victory for Taiwan. If you can see along the process, we don't see any riot, any protest, or any other ways of commotion. We don't see any plea for recount, or we don't see any potential legal actions. So, one time and again, this is we've envisioned what the comparative political scientists you refer to as a consolidated democracy, and I like to call it that we're a five-star democracy. We're a two thumbs up democracy. Time and again, the 23.5 million people have proved that we can make the decision on our own and by ourselves, not dictated by anyone outside of Taiwan. China has its own agenda, no doubt about that. China wants unification with Taiwan, through peaceful means or otherwise. We have our own perspectives. I don't think we're clearly sending any clear and loud messages to China or anybody around the world, except for the fact that we're a full democracy. We have the ability and the full right to come up with our own agenda and choose our own governments and way of governance. And this is what it counts.
Okay. Dennis, and yet Lai did not win an absolute majority. He won 40% of the votes. That means 60% was for opposition parties. What does that say?
Well, first of all, we need to know that the 60% doesn't mean they support China-friendly party. The reason they vote for the opposition party is because the government performance in the past 8 years, they may perceive this is unsatisfied, right? So the DPP government, even though the future President Lai will consider is how to deliver the message, how to deliver the policy, how to deliver the promise. In the future, I think Taiwan definitely, like Professor Tan mentioned, Taiwan is now a full democracy, but in order to become a real five-star democracy, the government need to deliver. The government need to deliver like economic prosperity. The government need to deliver better social welfare policy. Those kinds of things will determine whether Wen Lai will continue his tenure for not only one term but the second term.
Mm-hmm. Stephen, even though Dennis just earlier mentioned that the China factor is not a concern for Taiwanese people, especially voters in the future, however, we did remember former President Ma Ying-jeou, he said before the election that we need to trust Xi Jinping. Okay, so some speculation about this influences that it kind of disadvantages to the KMT's campaign. So my question for you is, did the China role in the election, especially Xi Jinping's emphasis on national unification, sway the intention of the voters? If so, in what way?
Well, I think it's. I think we should trust no one but ourselves. That's first. That's the first. And then whether or not China or CCP or Xi Jinping play a role in Taiwanese election or any other democratic process, I think it all depends on how the Taiwanese political figures and opinion leaders interact with their counterparts in China, including the key members of the CCP. If we put ourselves together as a whole, then I think no one can divide us. Mm-hmm. If some of the opinion leaders go hand in hand with the opinion leaders in Beijing, that's a totally different story. I think now after the election, it's an era of reconciliation. We're trying to seek a consensus. We're trying to build up the nation to be a stronger nation. We're trying to have a constructive dialogue within ourselves. Political leaders, opinion leaders, and people on the grassroots, it's all the same. I think we try to sit down and have a cup of coffee or tea, and then to put ourselves together after election. I think the nation building, the state building, is even more critical this moment than before the election.
Mm-hmm. Dennis, is Xi Jinping a trustworthy guy that President Lai Ching-te is okay with him to talk to him?
Oh, it all depends on how we interpret the so-called trustworthy, right? Well, even Biden and Xi Jinping need to talk. So in order for anyone to talk, you have to have something kind of as a foundation for you to actually sit on the negotiation table. So it's not about trustworthy or it's not about trust Xi Jinping, but we have to find a way to maybe open the communication line for President Lai. I think it's very important. Remember, back to 1970s, only Nixon can go to China, right? Did Nixon trust China at the time? I don't think so. However, the reason why Nixon visits China is because American interest, the national interest. For Taiwan national interest, whether we like to open the communication line and how to open the communication line, maybe not at a high level government official level, but at the society level, I think the next government will definitely need to find a way to open the society level connection.
Right.
Oh, I just echo that, what Dennis just said. I think this is a perfect timing to resume the constructive dialogues under the premises that there is no political precondition, with the due dignity and mutual respect. Then I think for the track 1.5 and track 2, I think there's no reason that we cannot resume the dialogue between Taipei and Beijing. And also for the non-political affairs, under the authorization of both Taipei and Beijing, we can start to resume the discussions. And I think the upcoming Lai administration should be and is open-minded in that. And we look forward to the feedback from Beijing in that. And as far as I understand, Washington also encouraged the cross-strait dialogue. So I think we're hoping that we can create a momentum right after the Lunar New Year holidays to create a constructive dialogues between Taipei and Beijing.
Exactly, but that's the point, is that the dialogue for the bottom line, for Beijing, it wants sovereignty, part of sovereignty surrendered by Taiwan. Whereas for Taiwanese, maybe not for all, but for some Taiwanese business person want some kind of trade benefit from China. So would you kind of comment on this kind of negotiation? If you want to join this dialogue with each other, you have to surrender something, right?
Right. I think we're trying to be much less provocative, but in the meantime, if Beijing has a little bit more room or flexibility in not putting a big hat of the 92 consensus or one China principle under the Beijing's definition, and then creates a little room for some track 2 discussions or some conversations that would be extremely helpful, given the fact that the U.S.-China relationship have been also shifting to a new, shifting to a new momentum. There are lots of changes ongoing in the next couple of months. So with that overall environment, I'm hopeful. I'm a bit cautiously optimistic that there is certain room for that dialogue between the two sides of the strait.
You believe so too?
Yes, well, creating room is definitely indeed important, right? Actually, the first challenge for President Lai's administration is to find the so-called room and also find the olive branch, right? The U.S. also definitely encouraged that. Otherwise, we won't read the piece November 30th. The 3 scholars sending a message to Taiwan suggesting that Weng Lai, if he got elected, maybe he can consider what President Tsai back in 2016 did in her inauguration speech, the 92 spirit or something. It's just a suggestion. However, that's a way to create a room. And talking about the trade between cross-strait, both sides, a lot of people, yes, in Taiwan, they like to have more business with China, but that doesn't necessarily mean we have to surrender our sovereignty. The point is whether the government can find a way or set up, and also all the parties in the legislative yuan can sit down and find a way to draft the rules or regulation. Based on that regulation, which is a consensus among all the 3 parties, then the businessman or business group will be happy to see, what to follow, what to obey, what to abide by, right? So there are a couple things to do, but I agree with Professor Tan. We should be, cautiously optimistic about the cross-strait relation.
Stephen, we've talked about maybe the Lai administration and considering maybe a slightly different stance, but let's focus now on the KMT. We talked about the third term as being unprecedented for any political party in Taiwan. On the flip side of that, for the opposition KMT, the main opposition party in Taiwan, that's also unprecedented. 3 terms in opposition in the wilderness. What do you think this result means for them?
Well, looking on the positive side of the story, I think the outcome of the election shows that 3 major political parties will be able to declare a small victory. DPP wins the presidential election in its 3rd term. KMT has not majority seat, but one more seat than DPP's in the legislative yuan, and the TPP under the Mayor Ke has become an influential 3rd party post-election. So each of the 3 major parties will be able to declare 3 small wins, but the question is, what next? Now, I think the February 1st will be the first day of the new session or the new legislative yuan, and electing the speakers and vice speakers and all the important posts. It would be a critical time for 3 parties to try to find the common grounds and try to postpone those who will be more difficult than not to resolve. And it takes tremendous political skills to do that. And also, I think that the DPP administration, it makes a lot of sense for the incumbents to go outside of the political circles, to seek the consensus of the grassroots, to have the common grounds in order to bring the momentum back to the legislative bodies to try to bring the consensus.
We're going to talk about the legislature a little bit later on, but let's refocus on the KMT. So I'll repeat my question again. What does this result mean for the KMT? It has to shift its policy. Maybe I direct this to Dennis. In terms of becoming more relevant to the electorate, an electorate that identifies as mostly 60% being Taiwanese only. What does this mean for the KMT in terms of its policy, in terms of, say, One China?
Well, a couple of things KMT need to learn from this election. Of course, they can claim we still win, more seats than other parties in legislative yuan, but they have to face the reality. The reality is they're losing, and they're losing support. The supporter group, in terms of their age group, you can see KMT is old, it's aging, which means in the long run, if they continue, if they don't change their party image, they don't change their party policy, especially the China policy, they may not get any vote in the next generation, and so on and so forth.
Is it possible for them to change policy on China?
Well, I think this time it's a wake-up call, right? It's a third consecutive turn that they can't get the executive power, so they have to reconsider. What's wrong with the party? The party platform need to be reformed, and also regarding the China policy. What kind of China policy is more appealing to the voter, especially a young voter, and also the party image? Why KMT always be considered, especially among younger people's view, it's an old, a stubborn, and no change party? Because when you look at the campaign rally, on the stage, it's always like your father or grandpa style of politician. This is not good enough for a younger generation. More importantly, the way they talk, the tone, the KMT traditional politician, they always try to mentor the young people, always try to lecture young people. That's not popular at all in today's world. And a lot of scholars from KMT side or the politician, they try to write articles and ask everyone to read those articles. But come on, given today's world,
you need social media, right?
Social media, YouTube, Instagram. You don't do articles. They don't read articles.
Ko Wen-je's book, right?
That's right. So Ko Wen-je is a very successful in terms of that.
Right. So speaking of Ko Wen-je and the TPP, some say that this election is a victory, even though it's not a larger scale. After all, Ko Wen-je did not win the presidency, but after all, the TPP gained 3 extra seats in the legislature. So that adds up to the 8 seats in the legislative yuan. So what's your comments on the TPP's performance in this election and also the future developments? Maybe Stephen, you go first.
TPP's performance is as expected, although in the past a week or so we've envisioned a surge in the vote count in the votes of the presidential candidate Ko Wen-je. Now I think. Just yesterday, Ko Wen-je announced that see you in 4 years. It's going to rerun in 2028, no doubt about that. But the first and foremost is that 2026, there is a local election coming up. The local councilors and the mayors and the county chiefs will be re-elected, and what the role that TPP will be playing, that's a critical question. But even before that, how Ko Wen-je will be able to manage his party caucus in the legislative yuan, there are 8 members. Those 8 members are critically important. Whether he's going to swing to this side of the street or this side of the aisle, that will make a determination. And then with this by a case-by-case basis, bill-by-bill basis, what will be the trade-offs, and who's going to lead that? You would assume that it's a single, it's a one-person party, but not anymore after the election, not anymore in the new legislative session. Will Ko Wen-je continue to dictate his own agenda, or will be some other political figures that will have a slightly different view, and how the TPP members will continue to be a consolidated force, or would it be a split? That remains to be seen. But quickly getting back to what Ing just asked about the KMT. My question, and Dennis is an insider on the KMT, but my question from the outsider's perspective is really that, what is KMT? And who represents KMT after the election? Would this continue to be the party chairman Eric Zhu, or would this be Han Kuo-yu as the potential speaker of the legislative yuan, and then various other political figures in the legislative bodies, and the mayors of New Taipei City and Taichung, and I think as regards to its a policy towards China, that's another different dynamics. So I think post-election KMT would need lots of deep thinking and consolidation, not just in powers, but the thoughts and ideologies. And I think that's more important than than anything else.
Maybe KMT can learn from TPP in terms of the younger generations' wishes and also their need. You kind of comments on the TPP.
Yes, well, KMT definitely can learn from TPP in a different way. And also, I echo Professor Tan's mention, thank you for the suggestion. Actually, KMT need to have a strong leadership, a strong leader. And in the past, you see, traditionally within KMT, the politician always wait for people to support him or support her until the last minute, everyone like me, so I automatically become the king or the queen. But now KMT has to change. KMT has to have, if someone within KMT party and like to be the next presidential candidate, he or she need to declare, I want to be the leader. Just like Ing-wen did, in 2004. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter when you declare, but you have to be very clear. Once you take that leadership position, then you have to reorganize the party and also the ideology. They have to consolidate what they want to deliver among the young generation, among the older voters, and then they will make the different image to voters. I think that's a very important step. A first step. And I'd like to also mention the TPP's future. I think for TPP, there are two things they have to do. One, deliver. The first thing is deliver. The second is to establish the party structure, national structure for local election in 2 years. The first thing, deliver. Deliver means within legislative TPP party, they have to find a way to make the bill actually pass by legislative yuan. But passing bill is important. It's kind of delivery, but it's hard because they have to collaborate with either KMT or the DPP.
Dennis, actually, we have a graphic that we can show the legislators. So Ing-wen's TPP, although we've talked about the 8 at-large seats, it didn't win any elected seats. So the 8 are the party seats in the legislature. As you can see here, as predicted, the DPP lost control of the parliament. KMT winning 52. Stephen mentioned 1 ahead of the DPP's 51 and the TPP on 8 seats. So we have been talking about what this means for how policy can be passed, and essentially that those 8 seats will be crucial to getting past the 57 vote majority. What does all this mean in terms of how do you see Ing-wen's influence? He obviously would be disappointed that there weren't actually elected seats.
That's right. So the thing is, well, if you look at the figure, like we mentioned, the TPP need to collaborate with either KMT or DPP. But when they make that decision to collaborate with either KMT or DPP, it may also disappoint his own voters, right? Because he claimed both traditional parties are terrible. So vote for TPP. So how are we going to manage that situation? And I do foresee that TPP will be critical and TPP will collaborate with either KMT or DPP case by case. It won't be like always work together with certain party. But that's also very problematic because it may not propose its own policy. That's first. Second of all, because TPP also suggests or propose the idea after the first 2 years, they're going to have the replacement in order to kind of develop or train like new politician. But it's really problematic. It's how to make it a reality, right? Because within 2 years, most of the TPP's legislator have no experience before. So the first 2 years it's already very difficult for the new party politician to learn how to make the bill passed. Then he suggests, after 2 years, it will be replaced.
Okay, now let's come back to the main job of this new president, Ching-te. So, Stephen, what is the most urgent issue you think the new Taiwanese leader should tackle immediately?
To try to put us to put us together as a whole. I think that's the most important thing post-election. By that,
unite Taiwan.
By that, I mean uniting Taiwan, uniting 23.5 million people, uniting the 60% of the voters who did not vote for him or his administration. And between now and then, between now and May 20, I think there is a period of time. Either you call it, the honeymoon period, or otherwise, it is the perfect timing for President-elect Lai to showcase that he has the ability and willingness to put ourselves together to unite Taiwanese people. There are a couple of things that he would be able to do. First is to invite as many people with different views as possible to have constructive dialogues, not within the legislative yuan, but outside. And then to seek some consensus on the common ground. And the second thing is that in the legislative body, for those that will be able to work on among the three parties, that should be put as a priority. Only by so doing will make a stronger nation to defeat and to face the threat from China.
Okay, Dennis, really quick. Yeah, what's the priorities for the new president to do?
I think unite the country, that's for sure, because that's already during the campaign season. We know whenever there's elections, we have divided society. So the first job is definitely uniting. And of course, we have already hear from the speech. President-elect Lai, William Lai, will try to do that. Second of all, of course, the cross-relation. We also have already heard that William Lai mentioned he's going to manage the cross-relations under the Republic of China government's constitutional structure, which is sending. Actually, I think that's already sending olive branch to Beijing, and I think he will follow President Tsai's pace. Hopefully, we will under President Lai will open the new era for cross-relation. But these two things will be the first challenges.
All right, Dennis and Stephen, thank you for the great insights.
Yes, thank you for joining the show today.
After the 8th presidential election, Taiwan has turned a new page. The world has witnessed a mature democracy in Taiwan functioning effectively.
And that brings us to the end of our show. If you liked our show, please search for us on YouTube, give us a thumbs up, and subscribe to Taiwan Talks.
Thank you and see you soon.